So, episode 19 of Dragon Ball Daima is right upon us. This is going to be a big episode. Smash a like on the video if you're excited for episode 19 after Super Saiyan 4 was revealed in chapter 18. Episode 18. The new chapter for Dragon Ball Super's manga, chapter 104, is also due out this week. Lots of spoilers are already out there concerning who is the clean god. I won't spoil it, but it's an exciting week to be a Dragon Ball fan. However, one of the biggest conversations that has arisen from episode 18 of Dragon Ball Daima is that Super Saiyan 4 has rendered not only Dragon Ball GT not canon, I know there's a lot of dispute about whether it was canon in the first place, but also Dragon Ball Super not canon. Obviously GT was never canon to Super anyway, it was his own canonicity at best, but that would mean the likes of Ultra Ego Vegeta, Moro, Granola, Black Frieza would never be part of a Daima continuation and would likely see Super cancelled if they decide to go in the Daima route instead. So that's what we're going to talk about today. We're going to get into it. Just before I continue, I know a lot of you are enjoying my Super Saiyan 5 theory video concerning a potential merger between Super Saiyan 4 from Daima and Ultra Instinct. If you haven't seen it yet, please do check it out. It's getting lots of positive feedback. I think it could definitely be on the cards. Of course, it's a theory, but make sure you subscribe to the channel because lots of content, lots of Dragon Ball content is coming your way. Look, I try and use what the community is talking about as a guide to which videos I make, and I usually make these videos off the cuff, so I'm glad you enjoy my content. Please do smash a like on the video and please comment something down below. It does truly help the channel. Lend me your energy. I do truly appreciate you all. So, obviously I'm bringing up the word canon. Now, some people can get very stiff when it comes to the word canon regarding Dragon Ball, simply because nobody seems to agree on what is canon Dragon Ball. I personally, and this is my personal view on it, is that you can have your own personal canon. My personal canon is what I would like to call, or what a lot of people in the community like to call, Toriyama's True Vision canon. But that renders the Toei-verse Dragon Ball not canon. However, of course, it is a canon unto itself. The truth is, the franchise don't care about the word canon. I absolutely agree with that viewpoint. It's more so something that the fandom cares about rather than the franchise itself, or even Toriyama for that matter. But I would say the most commonly shared, prominent canon that is accepted amongst the fandom is this ideological True Vision Toriyama version, which comes with a lot of subjectivity. However, like I said, I believe you can have your own idealistic preference on what is your favourite preferred version of your canon. Mine is the Toriyama True Vision canon, which is basically his manga, the original Dragon Ball manga. Dragon Ball Daima would count as that, and Dragon Ball Super is where it gets a bit more difficult because of Toyotaro and Toei's involvement in the different continuities of it, or adaptations of it, but I think I have a preference towards the manga. Based on the research I've done and the literature I've read, I feel like Toriyama's had more involvement in the manga than he did even in the anime. It feels like he's had more involvement with the manga. Let me know your thoughts on that down in the comment section. I know not everyone will agree. This is a highly subjective topic, but let me know your thoughts. However, with Dragon Ball Daima being True Vision Toriyama content, prime source material essentially for the Daima arc storyline, because of some of the instances that have happened in Daima, this has led a lot of people to actually claim that this renders Dragon Ball Super not canon. Now, obviously I mentioned GT earlier, but GT was always a Toei-verse canon unto itself, and it is a continuation of Dragon Ball Z, but it's Toei's own branching off of the franchise. Ultimately, Toriyama did have a bit of involvement in GT, but his involvement was basically early concepts and it was very limited. Now, I don't hate GT, I like GT, I think it's still got some good qualities. I still think Baby Vegeta is a really good villain. One of the best villains in the entire franchise in terms of his effectiveness as an antagonist. Let me know your thoughts on that down in the comment section. And GT ended well as well, but some of the arcs were terrible. Ultimately, Daima, bringing Super Saiyan 4 into the equation in Toriyama's main vision, has rendered the Super Saiyan 4 that we see in GT not possible in terms of Toriyama's vision, at least as far as we're aware. But of course, Super Saiyan 4 doesn't appear in Dragon Ball Super either, and Dragon Ball Super chronologically comes after Dragon Ball Daima, years after Dragon Ball Daima, and Goku clearly states against Beerus that Super Saiyan 3 is his strongest transformation, and as we've just seen, Super Saiyan 4 is stronger than Super Saiyan 3 by quite some distance. Now, I don't know if it will be called Super Saiyan 4, Hopefully it'll be something like Super Saiyan Primal. I've never particularly liked the continuation of the numbering system for the monkey-like Super Saiyan form, simply because it doesn't look like Super Saiyan 1, 2 or 3, and Super Saiyan 2 and 3 are really just powered up variations of the original golden-haired Super Saiyan. But obviously if he isn't using Super Saiyan 4 and he doesn't acknowledge that he has Super Saiyan 4, that causes a continuation problem and whether it can be canon to Dragon Ball Super. Ultimately, something would need to happen at the end of Dragon Ball Daima that would narratively fix this, and I believe that's not going to be particularly difficult for the creatives. Obviously the creative in this case was Toriyama himself, or Toyotaro should he continue to implement Daima into Dragon Ball Super. Obviously there's other instances in Dragon Ball Daima which I think may be harder to fix, but a lot of these can be solved by simple memory loss wish or memory loss magic. I mean, magic is in this series, that could easily accomplish something like that, especially the psychic abilities we've just seen Goma use, and then obviously there's Neva as well, and who knows what wish Gloria is going to make. Red Porunga is extremely powerful and has an incredible amount of potential in terms of wish creation that far surpasses what Shenron is capable of, or perhaps even Namekian and Porunga in the Universe 7 macrocosm. Now, the detractors to Super not being canon anymore, of course, are going to argue, well, we've seen the fact that they brought into equation the multiverse, which was introduced in Dragon Ball Super, and that the Demon Realm actually predates even the multiverse, and there are Kais, or Supreme Kais, now known to be Glins, basically doing the role of a shepherding god, I guess you could say. Gods of creations are like shepherds of the universes, and these Glins are now gods, and all of them from Super are in Dragon Ball Daima, and a lot of these gods of creations were created by Toyotaro himself, so some people think that's justification for it being canon to Dragon Ball Super. Now, that doesn't necessarily have to be the case. They may have just taken ideas from Dragon Ball Super and withheld them, but it could also be the opposite as well. It could also be proof. I know that's not going to convince everyone though. I think the biggest potential contradiction, of course, is the Supreme Kai no longer being fused with Kabuto Kai, as we see at the beginning of the Dragon Ball Super manga, the Battle of Gods movie, and the Dragon Ball Super anime. They are still in a fused state, and they use the Dragon Balls at the time of Battle of Gods to basically unfuse. They are not currently fused right now, and they also even know a method to actually unfuse without using the Dragon Balls as well, by basically just going back inside Majin Buu. But ultimately, they are fused in Battle of Gods, so that's the biggest contradiction. However, Shin still has Potara earrings. They could fuse for any other variation of reasons. Someone put out a theory that Shin and Kabuto will take the fuse bugs, or perhaps the wish will take them back into a state where they were fused. Imagine if the wish is along the lines of return them to the state they were in after they fought Majin Buu. Then Goku, Vegeta, and the Supreme Kai all go back into that state. Vegeta won't know he has Super Saiyan 3 or can achieve Super Saiyan 3. Goku won't know about Super Saiyan 4. So that solves that problem. I think people are too easy to point out that a retcon has taken place, when actually all they're doing is challenging what your interpretation is and doing something within the limits of that interpretation to come up with something new creatively. Another big contradiction is the fact that Vegeta has Super Saiyan 3 and he doesn't use it against Beerus. As far as I'm concerned, that's a major red herring, simply because, yeah, he would have used Super Saiyan 3 against Beerus if he'd known, because Beerus was about to destroy the planet, his wife, his kids. He would have used it if he had it or knew he had it. But once again, creatively can be saved by having them have their memory wiped. In this case though, like I said, it would have to somehow revert Vegeta way back into just after he fought Majin Buu when he didn't have Super Saiyan 3. Of course, Goku's only just got Super Saiyan 4, so the memory span for that doesn't have to be too long in terms of what is wiped. I mean, the third eye, here's another theory, the third eye could also be the thing that wipes their memory. Maybe they do eventually defeat Goma in the end, and to preserve itself, the third eye wipes their memory, sends them back to the universes in order to preserve itself until it can find a new host. There's so many ways it can go about this creatively. I think that's my main point, is creatively, nothing's been done in Daima so far that is irreversible in terms of what they can do in Dragon Ball Super without a bit of creative writing. And obviously I think we'll get that story come the end of Dragon Ball Daima. Now, what we do know is that Chapter 104 Dragon Ball Super doesn't mention anything about the next chapter of Dragon Ball Super and when it's coming. I didn't expect it to do so. I think right now, after Toriyama's death, last year, his sad passing. Toyotaro, despite the fact he's been working on Dragon Ball Super for years, there is a bit of a trial era going on, and I think this Clean God story is one of them, and I think it really depends on the reception to how this does. If it does really badly, then maybe they'll leave a storyline for Daima that allows it to survive on its own in a vacuum as a continuation from Dragon Ball Z, and leaving open certain elements that can move forward in a completely parallel universe to Super. However, it could also be made so that it fits in. And I personally feel that Daima's legacy will simply be that it's serving as exposition for a future arc in Dragon Ball Super, perhaps the Black Frieza arc, or whatever is the next arc in the Dragon Ball Super storyline. The Demon Realm has added so much lore and new powers and new variations of powers and techniques that it offers a potential powered up version of a challenge for Goku in the future. But ultimately, I believe that this will be canon to Dragon Ball Super, and Dragon Ball Super will still be canon. I think they'll leave it vaguely open so it can go in a different direction in case there is a bad reception to Toyotaro's continuation of the Dragon Ball Super manga, but ultimately it will be flexible so that it can fit in. I find it very hard to believe that they would ditch all of the extremely popular characters that Dragon Ball Super has created. I know not everyone's a massive fan of Super, and Super certainly has its flaws. It always feels like it's one or two ingredients away from being at the level of Dragon Ball Z, which I completely agree with, but there are a lot of positives about Dragon Ball Super as well. So I can see them bringing it all together to move forward post the end of Z in the future of the Dragon Ball story. Every new piece of material that has Toriyama involvement that's come out in this Dragon Ball Renaissance since Dragon Ball Super came to fruition has ended up in the Dragon Ball Super canonicity. I don't see why they would stop now, especially when it actually expands the verse itself and actually opens up the opportunity for further stories. I also don't think the cancellation of Super Dragon Ball Heroes is a coincidence. That continuity of the franchise had simply gone in a direction which is the natural progression for a story in the multiverse of Dragon Ball Super. But like I said, if there's a bad reception, I can see them leaving it open so they can go in a different direction and have different writers perhaps create new stories. And maybe some of you will prefer that. Let me know down in the comment section. I would prefer that they finish the Dragon Ball Super story first. I think it at least needs another arc for that to happen. Now, another important note is, if we go back to the Future Trunks arc, when somebody affects a god, it creates a new timeline. And obviously Shin the Supreme Kai, the god of creation, is in the demon realm at the moment. So if anything should happen to Shin, anything monumental, logically it should create a new timeline. Of course, this didn't appear in Super, so that leaves open a bit of a plot hole, but once again, creatively, there are ways around it. And the magic itself leads to pathways that could ultimately create parallel universes, or perhaps dreamlike sequences, and perhaps that's where Dragon Ball GT will remain in a certain fashion of canon within the franchise. I don't think they're going to just wipe it away as if it never existed, because it makes them money, and they are influenced by making money essentially, especially modern Dragon Ball, and if you haven't seen that yet, then good luck to you. But ultimately, that doesn't necessarily mean that everything they do is bad. Just because money is the motivator doesn't necessarily equal to it being a bad story. Anyway guys, I'm 99% sure that this will link into Dragon Ball Super. Obviously with what is going on behind the scenes between Ioku and Shueisha, does bring a bit of doubt, and you can record me in 4K saying that if you want, and if I'm wrong, but I'm confident that it will link to Dragon Ball Super in the future. Let me know your thoughts down in the comment section. I look forward to reading your comments. Smash a like on the video. Until next time, Ad Astra.